National Insurance Clearinghouse, the marketing arm of Brokers Alliance, presents a Bravo video event, the Business Insurance Zone, dedicated to financial professionals who use insurance in their practice. And now the host of the Business Insurance Zone, the whiz of the biz, insurance columnist Steve Savant.
Welcome everyone to the Business Insurance Zone. We're broadcasting live to a nationwide audience of insurance and financial professionals from Fountain Hills, Arizona, home of America's largest fountain. And with me today is Maria Umbach. Maria, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Steve.
I have to say, when I think of innovation, and I've seen your videos, read your blogs, seen some of your tweets. I have to say, you might be the most creative person I have seen on the web in our industry, which is usually Grey Poop Pond industrial boredom. I mean,
it's kind of like winning an arm wrestle in a nursing home, right?
Oh my gosh, I've never thought about that, but when I go in next, I'm challenging everyone.
Okay.
You know, I really want to take, our show is about taking insurance products and being creative about it, talking about it, blogging about it, tweeting it. All the social media that we do is really new to the industry. But what you're doing is even a whole nother level up because you have a think tank expression. You have a kind of a way of expressing yourself that I find distinctive. Talk a little bit about how did you learn all that? I mean, how did you go down that road? Because I want to talk about how we view insurance,
right.
It's the view, it's the how do we read it? And I know that I'm sitting here with my corporate glaucoma, right? I have this little narrow view, and you have this huge view, consumer as well as professional.
I appreciate the kind words and the compliments. I never really thought about it in terms of how did I get here, but it's kind of like a perfect storm of things, including getting into the business really young with a malleable mind.
I mean, how long have you been in the industry?
27 years.
Oh, so you're a vet.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Not a veterinarian.
Just a vet.
Just a vet.
Just a
exactly.
Vet. Okay, yes.
But it's a combination
I
of
just
having...
saw Pet Cemetery last night.
Oh, really?
That was scary.
Scary.
But when I talk about people that have been around the block for a long time, I mean, 27 years in our business,
Yeah.
You have really established yourself. You have third-party endorsements that are huge. So when you talk, people listen. And I've seen what's out on the website. If you haven't seen Maria before, hop on YouTube. I mean, she's out there. I just to our own website, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Tell me, when I'm reading, and I'm just saying, this is Steve. I'm kind of the old guard. It was hard to break out. When I'm looking at, I like this thing you call the dilemma of sold, not bought.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what's the dilemma? See, I don't even know if we know that there's a dilemma.
There's a dilemma.
Yeah.
It feels too natural. It's the thing that we've always said. And yeah. So where I'm focused now is obviously on innovation. Mm-hmm. And that is reinventing the insurance business. And you might say, well, why does it need to be reinvented? Mm-hmm. And we can talk about that later. But there's a lot of signs and signals that are showing that the business is just not getting... There's a lot of underinsured people in the United States. There's all kinds of margins shrinking and all kinds of challenges that are just getting worse and worse as time goes on, and it's because of commoditization. So that's part of the challenge and why the industry needs to be reinvented. But the dilemma of sold, not bought, really has to do with insurance, life insurance being what we call this crisis category. So anyone who's in the industry, this, people that your viewers know this, is that there's this feeling that life insurance needs to be sold in order for anybody to buy it because they're just not going to seek it out. Mm-hmm. And that's true, that it's the kind of product that people just don't look for. But the dilemma part of it is that the crisis category means that you're in a level of engagement that's very low. It's a product that people don't engage with very often. Mm-hmm. And then when they do, the experience pretty much stinks. Okay, so there's negative emotion around it.
Why is that? Why do we have negative experiences on purchasing something that people actually, want to have? I want to protect my family.
Right. Most people would.
Right.
But the process, the frustrating language, all of the confusing terminology doesn't help the situation. Obviously, there's some issues around having to think about death, but I don't think that that's the biggest culprit anymore. Mm-hmm. I think it's more that, first of all, people are just not that engaged because there's other things that are more on top of mind from a risk perspective than death per se. Mm-hmm. But then on top of that, we make the process kind of like hazing, as an industry. It's just long. There's a lot of information. You've got to give up literally blood.
The blood
money.
That's right. Everything. Yeah.
Little red, yellow, green, all that.
Right.
You have to give that up. So, we did a study recently and asked consumers to pick from like 22 different paintings about how they feel before, during, and after the process of buying insurance. And Van Gogh's The Scream was the number one.
Wow.
It was.
I'll have to think about that. That's going on our website. If I can get the copyright, okay.
It's true. It's true.
Wow. So the Scream was that was their way of expressing what the torture that they were going through.
Yeah. And it's not, again, it's partly the process and how long it takes and how many questions, but the confusing part of it is, where do I go? Where do I get information? They still don't feel completely covered throughout the process. And so, agents and brokers are out there doing their job and all, but there's still a lot of anxiety.
Well, I noticed you said this thing about language. I mean, I think on the Insurance Zone here, we've been attempting to knock down acronyms, talk about it, because usually we're going in front of clients with acronyms. I mean, how bad is that? I mean, but now you're talking about a whole new way of talking, period, a new dialect.
It's a dialect, it's language, but it's also tone. It's the way that we say what we say. And so the whole sold not bought, to get back to your question, is not just about pushing a product or feeling you need to push a product. It's really about creating more of a trusted dialogue and influencing. And I find it really valuable to go back to when insurance was an innovation a couple of 100 years ago, 200, 300 years ago. What was it about? It was really it was about social. It was about having social engagement. The debit system created that. It was invented for social good and to keep people from destitution, which is a social burden. And people's relationships were much more in that social vein. And the best in the business do that today. They do it naturally. You know them. They're watching your show, right? Yeah. But then there are too many that are into this robotic sort of product pushing mode that doesn't do the industry any good.
Well, I'm thinking, back in the day, I mean, Sir Edmund Halley invents the first, Mortality Chassis.
Right.
And we're still using the basic platform for that. And in his invention, of course, they were insuring shipping, and it was very commercial at the
marine,
time.
Yeah.
But then they got into we could actually quantify a human life on an analog timeline and price that. And I'm looking at our price. I mean, the last 25 years, I've seen a marked decrease in premium, whether it's term or permanent, and I'm looking at death claims, the lowest of all time. Right? I mean, you're seeing all these mix. And so it can't be that expensive to buy it. Everything keeps getting lower.
Right.
Competition's driving it. But we're not talking about it right. We're not framing the argument.
We're not framing it up right. And also attaching it to relevant. It's becoming irrelevant, especially to young consumers today. Because again, and it's nobody's fault other than the things that have happened in life that are good. People are living longer. It's just not a top of mind risk. Every day, people don't go to work worrying that they're not going to come home at night like they did a few hundred years ago. So that's part of the issue. So it's how do you create relevance around the life insurance product by attaching it to things that people find more relevant.
But Maria,
today.
Isn't there a basics? Let's say, even if we could divorce ourselves from the industry, and you and I have been in it so long, I don't know how I can get divorced from it. But
really,
I just wonder, isn't there a basic issue of stewardship anyways? I mean, head of family, businesses, you have to indemnify yourself. You have to cover it. You have to protect it.
Right.
So why is that not enough to deliver the sale, to deliver the message?
I wish it were, but I think that today's insurance consumer, and I'm not just even talking about life insurance, I'm talking about all types of insurance, they really don't get how it works. Like how pooling works. I mean, you know that. The people that are watching your show know that. Actuaries who design the products know that. But the average consumer expects insurance to be a one-to-one relationship. And it doesn't work like that. That's self-insurance. That is not a good position to be in, right?
Now, if it's not one-to-one, then what is it supposed to be?
Well, it's a pool. And some people are going to pay into that pool without getting benefits out. Not necessarily death benefits. Well, it depends if they have the policy when they die, right? But for other kinds of insurance, auto insurance or homeowners insurance, they may pay into it forever and never, ever, ever, ever have a claim. And they sometimes feel ripped off by that. And then you have to say, excuse me, you didn't have a claim. That's a good thing. You were insured the whole entire time because if you did, you would have been paid. But there's this disconnect between how insurance works and what benefits they expect to get
Well,
out of it.
I notice when I have auto insurance, I
Right.
get that,
Yeah.
right? And of course, our state and many states,
You have
it's
to.
mandatory.
Right.
But if it wasn't mandatory, I would still do it. You have a new car, you have to protect yourself. I'm thinking about my house, the biggest investment I'm going to have, protect me and my ability to pay my mortgage. I mean, I get that. Why can't I transfer? And that's commodity. Why can't I transfer that to life insurance? Why not?
It's interesting. I wonder that myself, and I've been curious about it for 27 years. It's always been something that I felt like, well, why don't people just get this? And I don't know. Maybe around when it comes to risk and when it comes to about that the stuff that they want in their life. Stuff. I want my car. I want my house. My life I take for granted. I have that. I was born with that. My health I take for granted to some degree. I have that. I'm entitled to that. So there's more of a disconnect between stuff and self. And so that could be part of it. However, again, it's about attaching relevance and trust around, not saying that all of a sudden some snap of the finger, some eureka moment is going to help us sell boatloads more of life insurance than we do today. But the trends are going in the wrong direction, right? So we need to figure out a way to turn that back around and have to look and say, okay, dial back the clock. What's missing today? What's missing? The social aspect is going in the wrong direction. We have to get that back.
Well, was there a fork in the road on that issue, or is it just a slow, kind of erosion?
Great question. I believe the fork in the road had to do with, well, there was a few forks in the road, but a lot of it has to do with distribution. Okay, so the debit system, when the debit system went away, and that was well before we were in the industry, or at least it was going away at the time.
Yes, I'm not that old.
Yeah,
so,
me neither.
Okay.
However, if you think about it, that was a very social construct in the industry. So that went away. That was one of the
I can't imagine
pillars.
going door to door,
No,
collecting a monthly premium.
Yeah.
Oh, I just can't even
And
conceive
today,
it.
I would see that would be ridiculous today too. But the social aspect is part of that. What kept credibility inside the profession, right? So then when manufacturing and distribution sort of had this detachment inside of companies, and career systems started to go down as well, that also created more of an erosion there in terms of the social aspect. So now, what's the job that we need to do? We need to get it back. And so now you can say, forget trying to put it back exactly the way it was, because that will never work. How do people get social today? And you're an expert in media, right?
Well, I know one big thing that we've learned in social media, and I think it's transferable. We are not transaction oriented any longer.
Right.
We are relationship.
That's the key.
I mean, to me, if I've learned anything about social media and how it could apply back to life insurance, it's relationship.
You got it.
Unbelievable. When you think about it, even I, as old as I've been in this business, I can even learn new things. Unbelievable. Well, you're listening to the Business Insurance Zone, the talk show that focuses on insurance in your practice. You can email me at thebiz@brokersalliance.com or call me toll free 1-800-7226, extension 147. And coming up in our next segment, Maria and I are going to be talking about Chinese finger torture. Yes. I can't believe it. All this after the break.
Banner Life Insurance Company and its subsidiary, William Penn Life Insurance Company of New York, comprise the Legal and General America companies, part of the International Legal and General Group, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. Now, Legal and General America is one of the top-rated insurance companies in America, with one of the strongest financial balance sheet among its peers. Legal and General America is a major player in guaranteed term and guaranteed universal life, and consistently ranks among the best carriers in almost every product spreadsheet. Legal and General America's product line of guaranteed universal life endows at the maturity date, while most carriers' cash values just zero out. You know the reputation of Banner? Now know the value of LGA, Legal and General America. The power to protect, the power to preserve, the power to serve their policyholders. That's Legal and General America.
Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Steve Savant, your host, insurance columnist, financial commentator, and interviewer extraordinaire. Oh, yeah. And remember, before moving forward with any of the strategies you hear on the show, always get counsel from your CPA, your attorney, and, of course, your compliance department. You can call me toll free at 1-800-290-7226 extension 147 for any of your questions or quotes on life insurance, annuities, DI, LTC, and group pension. And of course, it's not what I know, it's who I know. And that's why I have Maria on our show today. We're talking about, I can't believe it, life insurance and Chinese finger torture. I love it. And only here, and if the show goes big, we'll buy a bunch, and for everybody that calls in, we'll try to give one away.
Awesome.
Chinese finger torture. Now, okay, why are you putting life insurance and Chinese finger torture in the same sentence?
Okay, great question. I'm not sure I know the answer. No, I really do.
I hope you do.
I do. What do these two things have in common?
Right.
And one of the things I talk about all the time and have been for years is, and this is basic marketing 101, and that's my background in the industry, is the difference between push marketing and pull marketing. Push marketing is all those activities that an insurance company or a distribution channel does in order to get people to sell more of their product, incentives, that kind of thing. Pull marketing is anything that's done directly to the consumer to get them to put their hand up and say, I'm interested in talking to somebody about this, whatever that is. So the reason why Chinese finger torture and life insurance have something in common is sometimes you have to go the opposite direction in order to get the result that you want. It's a little bit like jug handle turns in New Jersey. That's where I live, in New Jersey, right? Same thing. You have to go left to go right. You have to push in to get your fingers out of the Chinese finger torture. And I think we're in this cycle of feeling that we have to push and push and push and push and push the product in order to get more sales. And in today's environment, with today's type of consumer that is combing the web for information about products and services, and basically, in many ways, this is going to sound counterintuitive, selling things to themselves, you need to do less pushing and more pulling in order to get consumers to be ready.
Well, let's back up for a second, because I'm getting I'm walking with the metaphor.
Okay, good.
All right, I have my finger torture, and yes, when I first did this in high school, whoever gave it to me, I could not get out. I could not dislodge myself.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And finally, I figured, I have to. It's counterintuitive, but I have to actually go deeper into it to get the release.
Right.
I understand how we've been pushing a mantra in our industry for a long time,
Right.
and I don't know if anybody that's coming from the MBA, industry, who comes into our business, who is a marketing person, actually gets the idea that we've been pushing out irrelevant material for about 25 years.
Right.
I mean, our publications, everything that we're doing is just completely like actually, we have the same disease as most institutional banks.
Right.
I mean, going to my teller is a torture issue, right? I just want my money out of my account.
Right, please.
Why is that not easy?
Right.
But we push a lot of things, and we think that if we just flood the market, if we oversaturate, if we're on every channel, we're going to be picked up. We have to do the law of large numbers just for any shot at being successful.
Right, and that worked. And those numbers are getting worse, but we're still doing it because they still make somewhere along the line financial sense to do that. But guess what? The consumer's tolerance for that is waning big time, especially with younger generations. And there's a better way. There's a better way. And so the idea of the finger torture, okay, so stop pushing, start pulling, but how do you pull? It's not about, again, going and doing some big ad campaign that says, pounds the chest about a company or an organization or life insurance or the product. It's not that.
So the gorilla ad for AXA may not be, well, no, I'm kidding.
Well, we love AXA, don't we?
We do.
Love the gorilla,
we
too.
do a tremendous amount of premium, but I always wondered, is gorilla life insurance.
Well, the animals with an attitude is a whole different category that we can talk about in terms of advertising.
Wow, I'll have to
but
go
I have
there.
a different, like Spuds McKenzie and all those kind of animals.
Oh, yeah.
The Geico Gecko. Anyway, here's something I want you to think about, and you're doing this in your business here at Brokers Alliance, and I do it in my industry, my field. Is be a thought leader. Find a category and lead it. And that category has to be something very narrow and specific. And then you have to become known as the expert in that category. So then when you use all your social media techniques and all those things that you use to push stuff out there, what you're pushing out there is something of real value to that consumer.
But people are gonna relegate people that are imaginative and creative and thought leaders to
Right.
a very narrow people that say, well, I'm not that. How can I make my, my business, my practice
Right.
really distinct? What can I really hold out there that's really a category by itself
Right.
that I can get a little drag on, a little bit of attention? Most people say, well, that's people like you, Steve, and people like Maria. You guys are into this 24/7. But for the regular financial professional insurer, how can I become a thought leader when maybe I don't think I'm that creative?
Well, great question. And I think everyone's creative when they find their passion. What is it that they're really good at inside of this business? What element of it? Ask your clients, think about your best clients, the best 5 that you have, and what would they say about you? I call that the reverse elevator speech. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology, but I invented it.
I had it from you.
Yes.
I heard it from you.
Well, you know what the elevator speech is? It's what would you say in 30 seconds if you were in an elevator and that's all you had to tell somebody what you did. The reverse elevator speech is basically what people say about you after you left the elevator and they're still inside. So what are they saying behind your back, right?
Wow.
And is it the same thing you said to them? Is it some interpretation of that? Is it something completely different? Or does it sound like this? I have no idea what that guy just said. What does he
Right.
do for a living? I have no idea.
Right.
So that's an important element to think about. But the point is, what are you uniquely good at, and what can you build around that that's really relevant to the consumer? So I'll give you an example that's a little bit outside of the insurance industry, but in the financial services space. And nobody that's watching your show is probably a huge fan of Susie Orman, I would say. That's probably not...
That would be an understatement.
That would be an
on this show.
understatement. But let's just use her as an example.
I think I still have a lifetime ban from her show.
Right, do
I'm
you?
not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, let's just take her as an example, because the reason why she got to such popularity is that she drew a circle around a small, it's not a small group, but it's a very specific group of consumers called the Young, Fabulous, and Broke, and became the guru of getting out of debt. Now, it's expanded into other things around money, and now all of a sudden, she's an expert in insurance and all that stuff too, which bleeds into what we do. But the point being is that's where she started. Young, Fabulous, and Broke. Okay, that's a very, very specific area. Just a good friend of mine who's in the insurance industry, who's made his thought leadership platform all around due diligence. Dick Weber. I don't know if you know him, but he started out as the due diligence guru in life insurance selling.
No.
The guru of variable life insurance as an asset class, and now about fiduciary standard, and that's his thought leadership platform, and that's how he's made his career. And so think about that. Think about the things that you're really, really passionate about and good at in a narrow way.
I'm just always wondering, is there something new to create? Is there something
Always.
Is there something new to invent? And I think that's where our producers are thinking. They're thinking, well, gee, I have to have Steve do that for me, or I have to have Maria do it for me, because that's outside my 9 dots. And by the way, that can be done if you want to actually get online and talk with her. It's www.soldnotbought.com.
Right.
And you can go onto her site, see some of the things that Maria's done on video, blog, articles, because sometimes you need a little outsource to get the pump going. I need, hey, show me a couple ways, and then maybe I can figure it out for myself.
Right. And so in terms of thought leadership, what you really want to make sure you're doing, this is what we do in our business when we do innovation for large brands, is finding the tensions out there in the market. What is it that the consumer would be saying about what's bugging them? And not necessarily specific about the product that you're selling, but sort of in general around the risk issue, around family protection, all those things that you mentioned. What are their tensions around that? And then can you own that problem? And what can you do to own that problem and then become the thought leader in that area?
Well, if I'm in my community, I'm a professional financial advisor.
Right.
And I'm using insurance as part of my practice.
Right.
And most of our audience, that's true. So I want to own if I'm hearing correctly, I want to own a space where I can address not what I want to talk about, but what I think my audience wants to maybe even complain about or challenge it.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of being, well, this is what they want. No, they're complaining about it all the time. Can I fix that complaint? Can
Bingo.
I address it?
That's it. We have a client that owns the idea of see-through insurance, meaning so people are scratching their heads about, oh my goodness, how do I make heads or tails around this? So we talk about the idea of transparency all the time. That sounds like technical mumbo jumbo, but
actually, see-through insurance.
See-through insurance
sounds
much
very
more
racy to me.
Oh yeah, well there you go. And that, hey, if it drives traffic, then hey, that's half the battle, right? But the point being, see-through insurance, meaning can you understand it? Is it really literally transparent? I mean, they toyed with the idea of IHateInsurance.com or WeHateInsurance2.com, because again, how do you get in the sauce with the way that the consumer is thinking about that? And there's a lot of validity to that. You have to make sure that you're speaking in the tone that the consumer is hearing.
Now,
and
that's
and
the
talking
second
to
time
each
you
other.
mentioned this in the show. Now, the
Yeah.
language I get, the tone I don't.
Tone, yeah.
So talk a little bit about tone.
Okay, so today's consumer would probably say, and has in our surveys, that they feel talked down to, particularly younger generations.
Demeaning.
Okay, so
Demeaning.
yeah. So the younger generations in particular, Gen Y. So that's anybody who's born after, let's say, the mid '80s or the early '80s. They feel that there's a condescending tone, and it's not necessarily out of anything other than the best of intentions. It's just that I think when the industry that's dominated by boomers are looking at younger people, they automatically kind of put them in that zone of, this is my kid.
Right.
And so they're talking to them in that sort of way, and young people today, or young people, I guess in any generation, want to be treated as equals.
Well, we're going to have to pick all this up tomorrow. This is huge. I'm never going to be pedantic again. Well, remember, you can view and download our show in the entire series in high definition 1080p on our on-demand video section located on our homepage at www.brokersalliance.com and on YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, Twitter. I'm Steve Savant. You've been listening to the Business Insurance Zone. That's the buzz on the biz for today. Get in the zone, the Business Insurance Zone.
This has been a Bravo video event of the National Insurance Clearinghouse from the marketing arm of Brokers Alliance, one of the largest distributors of insurance products and services, to a nationwide network of insurance professionals. Need insurance guidance? Call Brokers Alliance.